Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Italian marinated grilled cheese. That's right, by briefly marinating our cheese and include a few things we might find in an antipasto, we can easily create a new and amazing twist on the classic. And don't worry, even though this is based on a recipe that went viral on social media, it is not stupid. In fact, it's very smart and incredibly delicious. And to get started, of course, we're going to need some cheese. And I'm going to use 3 kinds, some Monterey Jack. We'll also do some cheddar, as well as a slice of provolone. Plus, to make things even more interesting, our sandwich will also include some pickled peppers in the form of pepperoncini, which we'll pair with some roasted red pepper, as well as some beautifully briny pitted green olives. And please double check they're pitted, since the ones with pits make a terrible sandwich. But anyway, that's going to be it for the inside. Now let's get to the outside, which will be a couple nice thick slices of Italian or French bread. And I decided to go with a seeded sourdough, but anything that looks like this and is about this size is going to work beautifully. And as you well know, to get a slightly bigger slice, if you cut the bread at an angle, you're going to get a longer piece. Right, that is just basic geometry. And once we have the inside and the outside to our sandwich prepped, we will whip up a very quick, simple Italian dressing, which will start with some freshly minced garlic, followed by a little splash of white wine vinegar, or I think any vinegar would work. We will also, of course, need some olive oil, at which point we'll spice this up with some freshly ground black pepper, some chili flakes, and I used Aleppo instead of Italian because they don't have any seeds. And then speaking of Italian, I'm going to put a nice big pinch of dry Italian herbs, and that's it. We'll simply take a whisk and give this a mix. And by the way, if you don't have a pre-mixed Italian herb blend, you can just do your own with a pinch of basil and a pinch of marjoram and oregano and rosemary. All right, you know the ones. And then once our dressing's nicely mixed, we can go ahead and start grating in our cheese. Oh yeah, I said grate in, not slice in, which is how it's supposed to be done, according to many social media influencers. But I think by grating it, we're going to be able to do a much faster marination. And also, I think the texture of the final sandwich is far superior. So we will grate in our cheddar and Monterey Jack, which I like to refer to as mozzarella with flavor. And then because the provolone came in a slice, we'll just go ahead and break that up in quarters before we give this all a quick mix, which I like to do before we add our diced veggies or whatever else we're going to throw in here. Right, there's going to be a little bit of moisture on those things, which might cause the grated cheese to clump up. So let's make sure we have that dressing mixed in nice and evenly before we move on to that step. And that's it. Once we do, we can mix in the rest of the ingredients, at which point, if we're starving, we could just go ahead and build our sandwich and grill it. But this is called a marinated grilled cheese after all. So we should probably wrap this and toss it in the fridge for at least 15 minutes. Although of course you can go longer if you want. And in case you're keeping score at home, I refrigerated mine for 30 minutes before I pulled it out and started piling it up on my bread. And we're going to want to start with our sliced provolone first, so that we know we're going to have some nice even distribution. Oh yeah, everybody should have a little bit of provolone. And once that's been placed down, we'll use a spoon to transfer over the rest. And as you can see, I went vegetarian with this one. But if you did want to include some Italian meats, that would be fine. I mean, you are after all the Chef Giovanni of whether to add some salami. But if you do, be careful, because that can and will dominate the flavor profile. But anyway, no matter which you use, once we have everything transferred on and tucked in, we will add a generous amount of olive oil to a skillet set over medium heat, and then we'll carefully transfer our marinated cheese sandwich in, and then we'll add a little more olive oil to the top, since really the only way to screw up a grilled cheese sandwich is to not use enough fat to fry it in. So whether you're going to use olive oil or butter, make sure you use a lot. And then from here, I think most of you know exactly what to do. We will let that first side brown and crustify nicely before we flip it over. Oh, and pro tip, always flip a grilled cheese over towards the flat side. All right, if you flip it over towards the rounded side, quite often those pieces of bread will separate and cheese will spill out. And you will have what we call in the business a situation. All right, there's a very old saying I just made up. If you want it great, flip it towards the straight. Oh, and if you use a nice open crumb bread like I did, because our cheese mixture has lots of moisture, as our cheese heats up and liquefies, all that goodness kind of melts between the holes and then caramelizes on the surface, which makes an already incredible crust even more incredible. Which reminds me, one of our first viral videos ever was something called Inside Out Grilled Cheese, where we put cheese on the outside of the bread also. Well, this actually kind of reminded me of that, which, believe you me, is a very good thing. But anyway, once we're very happy with how that's been grilled on both sides, we'll go ahead and remove that to a cutting board. And we will slice in. And while I do, let's listen in. Oh yeah, that sounds exactly how we want it to sound. And I know when we were building this, you were thinking that was too much cheese. But as you can now hopefully see here, I believe it was the perfect ratio. But anyway, it looked, felt, and smelled amazing. So I went in for a nice big bite. And that, my friends, really was incredible. All right, besides obviously adding a lot of extra flavor, by marinating that grated cheese, something's actually happened to the texture. All right, probably something having to do with the acid and the proteins and, I don't know, molecules. But anyway, the inside is hot and melty, but it has a completely different texture to regular melted grilled cheese. And unless you make one, you are really not going to understand what's going on here. Oh, and one last thing before we sign off. If you want your version to go viral online, you're going to need to not grate your cheese and leave it in thick slices, and also use mozzarella so you can get that iconic pulled stretchy cheese shot. But with very few rare exceptions, mozzarella is a terrible grilled cheese since it has virtually no flavor. So if you want to add that for purely visual reasons, go ahead. But if you want to make a really good grilled cheese, don't. But having said that, no matter what cheeses you decide to use, by giving it a quick marinade before we grill, you'll be able to produce one of the best grilled cheese sandwiches you've had in a long time, which is why I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.